Ooh, beautiful. Oh, look at this. Oof. Sitting ducks. Oh, look at this dude. He just got played. Okay. That's the crest of blood. Or at least the beginning stages of it, I suppose. A little too easy? Hey, Schwallens.
だから練炭術は龍脈の流れを読むんですって。だからそれがわかんないんだって。感覚を研ぎ澄ませるんですよ。3、はい。ほら感じた。無理だって。できますって。
すまないな。かくまってもらって。
気にするな。こちらも助かってるし。
ひどい目にあった。みんな働いてるっつうのに。残波の野郎はどこ行きやがったんだよ。
こっちだ。案内する。
Oh.
頼むよ、残波の。
God damn it. Bite of the hand.
セリムのこと知ったそうだな。
はい。
私の正体も。
はい。
国のトップと息子がホモンクルスであるというのは。一国民としてはどんな気分かね。
信ずるべき家族までもが虚構であるというのは悲しいことだと思います。愚か者とあざける人間の真似をした。
確かにあれは上から与えられた息子だ。大総統の地位も部下も全て与えられた。だが妻だけは自分で選んだ。
Yeah, it felt like that.
お茶はまだかね。
はい。
That caught her off guard. Ooh, beautiful.
ドクター、あの第五研究所のお偉いさんだったのか。
偉いわけではない。部下が何人かいただけだよ。みんな今頃どうしているだろうか。おい。
Yeah. Oh god. Oh god.
もういいよ、残波の。三文芝居はここまでだ。
Yeah, it's pretty terrible, the act he's putting on.
こんにちは、ドクター。こんなところで何やってんのかな。なんだこりゃ。残波の
三文芝居はもうおしまい。
Yes!
貴様をここに誘い出すのが目
Yes!
的だ
I
った
did
のだ。
not see that coming.
英烈な貴様のことだ。私が生きていると分かれば自ら追ってくると思ってね。
Okay.
3匹で何ができる。
There's a few of them here.
ゴミはゴミです
か。Okay, man.
どうだ。かすだゴミだと扱ってきた我々になぶり者にされる気分は。
騙されてますね。
Got him
遠隔練習ですのに。
Yes.
すまない。
デブのくせにすごい。
ゴミカスを舐めるなよ。
Oh wow, look at this. Here comes Scar.
ならばこれでどうだ。
貴様、まだあそこでそんなものを作らせているのか。研究者たちを、私の部下を解放しろ。
Yeah. Yeah, they got turned into.
だってあいつら全員賢者の石にしちゃったもん。
Kimberly has it.
私の部下までも。
でもドクター、今さら悲しむ必要なんてないよね。だって今まで散々賢者の石を作ってきたじゃないか。人の命を使ってさ。
そうだ。私は多くの人を犠牲にして賢者の石を作った。この国の誰よりも賢者の石の作り方を知っている。作り方を知っているということは壊し方も知っているということだ。
Holy!
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Tim Marco.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Hey? Whoa. Whoa. Oh.
こんなことがこの LP が貴様ら下等生物にやられるわけなんだ。キメラまで見るな。
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's
私を見下すなよ、
yeah,
人間が。
fucking embarrassing moment. Oh.
見るな、虫けらが。
Yes. Oh. Oh, Marco.
勝ったぞマルコ。
And the clouds parted.
私は今まで言われるがまま動いてきた。
There you go.
だ
There
が
you
こ
go.
れだけは自分でケリをつけたかったんだ。
Take some
自分で
control.
考えて自分で決めて君のご両親のように。
でもやっぱり無茶はしないで。
助けて。
Yeah.
こいつの体はいただいた。
It's like a parasite,
やめろ
essentially.
化け物。
化け物
体が言うこと聞かない。
無駄無駄。さあお前たち、こいつを助けたかったら。
It's kind of cute, the
好き
voice.
にしていいぞ。そいつ仲間じゃないしな。
キズの旦那は私の味方ですよね。ね
Scarred, sir.
目そらしたから。
もはやなりふり構っている我々ではない。邪魔するならその男の体ごと滅ぼすぞ。
取れた。
Effective.
本当。
そろそろお前らの計画について聞かせてもらおうか。
知らないね。
Yeah.
んだとこら。吐き上がれ虫けらよ。
どうする？一旦バズクールへ
No,
戻
you
る
can't do
か。
that right now.
いや、兄さんならこういう時きっと相手の無事を信じて前に進もうとするはず。だから僕らも前へ進もう。
俺は一度別行動を取る。少し前から考えていたことだ。
Ooh.
イシュバールを否定したこの国をただ憎むのではなく変えるために。そのためにはマルコ、お前の力も必要だ。
分かった。一緒に行こう。
この国を変えるため。
Yeah, she's thinking of her own country, right?
予想通りならそこにもあのトンネルがあるはず。
Hmm.
だからそれを壊す。
お
Lior.
前はこれを持って国へ帰れ。
そして
ちょっと旦那。
殺しても死なないホムンクルスの慣れの果てだ。これでお前の一族が助かるかもしれん。
Reverse transmutation.
私が帰ったら練炭術のことが分かる。
人の国にかばっている場合か。もし権力争いに負けたら、お前は命運を託してくれた者たちによその国にかまってて助けられなかったと言い訳するのか。
Oh. She's grown attached to them though, right? Hmm.
ございました。
練炭術一段落したらまた学びに行くよ。
ハル様。
That'd be nice. Oh.
皆さん、本当にありがとう。さようなら。
Yeah. It's difficult. It is. It's gotta be, right?
それじゃあ我々も。
Ah. Until next time. Until next time. Hopefully. And they are going towards Lior. I'll have to kind of go back and check that scene out because there's two conversations going on.
グリードさん。
Oh!
泉カーティスは旦那と旅行に行っていていつ戻るかわからんらしい。
一旦ブラッドレー大総統のところへ報告しに戻るか。
He remembers Bradley, all right. Shoo!
りのものをよこしてもらおう。
そうだな。
Jeez, PTSD, huh?
あいつらについていけばグレードさんに。でも
Kind of.
足を溶けていただけませんか、姉上。
ここでは少々と呼べ。
マム。
相変わらずふぬけた面をしろって。
これではいつまで経っても嫁のもらい手が。
お前は闘争心が足らんのだ。グズが。お前といると臆病が移るわ。
I'm gonna catch it.
ここにいたか少々。弟かね。
弟と思いたくありませんな。イシュバールから逃げ帰るような臆病者。
That's not ominous at all.
三大制限を知ってるかね。
確か軍に逆らうな、金を作るな、人を作るな。
Do not create gold.
その通り、金を作るのは経済の混乱を避けるため。では、人を作るのはなぜ国家は人を作ることを禁止している？
倫理にも取るからでしょう。錬金術師らの間でも神への冒涜と暗黙のうちに禁じられていると聞きま
But
す。
the lighting here, really interesting.
違うな。
Ooh, those glasses.
倫理などというのは時代や個人によって変わるものだ。
Oh, the immortal
理由
soldiers.
はそんなものではない。個人が強力な軍隊を持たぬようにするためだよ。少々。
確かこの辺に。
Oh.
元気だった。
なんだ、知り合いか？
Oh yeah.
まあちょっと。
すごく会いたかったのに。
おや？いや、その微妙な顔は何かと思いまして。
変なこと言わないでよ。
おーい、ロゼ。
He's still here.
洗い終わったよ。他に仕事。
He's still here. Oh my god. I just assumed he left. Oh. Okay, yeah, you know, I've got to say, this episode specifically feels like one of the most satisfying episodes of the entire series, of the entire anime. One of the most fulfilling, right? It's highly enjoyable and entertaining, of course. But yeah, you know, something about the focus on this ensemble cast, on this group, really reiterates just how strong the characters are. I mean, so many of these characters that do make up this incredible ensemble cast are so engaging. So engaging, and they have such engaging character arcs. Look at Dr. Marco, for an example. I mean, this episode itself could just be the Dr. Marco episode, right? And, you know, once again, it kind of showcases this anime and the story's ability and Arakawa's ability to kind of juggle so many important plot points, or so many plot points at the same time over the span of a 22-minute episode. Right, over the span of this last phase of the story as well. And I feel like it's going to escalate even further as it gets closer and closer to its ending, to its conclusion. That being said, I think maybe for the first time in a long time, there is one plot point that felt like it was a bit rushed and kind of just set aside a little too quick after, you know, all the setup it had. And I'm speaking of the Drachma and Briggs situation, right? The war, the Crest of Blood that was being set up for a long time, essentially, since the whole, you know, North arc began. And the thing is, I'm not saying that it's something I was really excited about or for. It's just that, you know, given its setup, given its substantial setup, it was just wrapped up quite quickly, wasn't it? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me that much, you know, but it is something that was noticeable, ultimately. But at the end of the day, it looks like, yeah, that's it. That's the Crest of Blood. That was required, and Kimberly made it happen, right? And I was essentially on the right track. Yeah, it didn't matter. It didn't matter whose blood it was that was being shed as Drachma gets decimated. You know, hell from above. Yeah, you know, but Miles kind of, you know, Miles, of course, he picked up on the fact that this seemed like it was a little too easy, right? A little too routine, given the fact that, you know, they know Drachma as someone that is meant to be quite formidable, I think. But yeah, you know, that was wrapped up right in the cold open. At the end of the day, I suppose a prolonged battle was not going to be the best use of the runtime anyways, right? Because, yeah, you know, Drachma is just this faceless, I mean, there is a face to the general, but ultimately it's just this, you know, entity that doesn't really do much for the story as a whole, right? So yeah, you know, it's understandable that they didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I was surprised that it was wrapped up so quickly after the setup it received. And then, of course, Hohenheim, who I did not think is still going to be here, just, you know, walks right in. And he looks quite happy, and he's really quite friendly. And, you know, that in itself should be interesting, you know, from Al's perspective. You know, he's seeing his father, who he remembers being quite cold towards them, right, in their childhood. Again, it's a matter of perspective, right? Us, the audience, knows that, you know, he wasn't cold. Something else is going on there. But again, you have to look at it from their perspective as children. Yeah, it appeared to be that, yeah, this man who is their father, yeah, he didn't really show them much love. But imagine Al seeing Hohenheim in this mood, you know, friendly, and he appears to be happy to be helping others. So, you know, just then and there, for a split moment, it must have some impact on Al, right? To see him like this. But yeah, you know, it's quite the shock for everyone, for me, for Al, for Hohenheim. So exciting setup. I mean, you know, cliffhangers don't get much more exciting than that. You know, I've been thinking about this, and I've been discussing a potential Al and Hohenheim reunion. Because as you know, I've maintained for a long time that any potential Hohenheim and Al reunion might play out differently, right? Again, there is a contrast in terms of personality, right? Ed and Al. So yeah, this is perhaps one of the most exciting moments of the series for me, to see these two finally get to kind of reunite and talk it out. I'm sure Al has a lot of questions, as he should, of course, as he's allowed to have, essentially. And it'll be interesting to see how Hohenheim kind of reacts to him and to these questions. And of course, you know, through Al, Hohenheim is going to be getting some updates about Ed, about the things they know at this point, so he can kind of act and speak accordingly, right? Maybe he can drop some of that facade, and he can kind of begin the process of reconnecting, you know, with his children, beginning with Al, who's right there. So I think it's exciting. It's really quite exciting. There's actually a lot of interesting setup in this episode, even though it feels like one of the most satisfying and fulfilling episodes because of how it concludes a lot of these plot points, right? But yeah, look at the lizard guy who's reintroduced at this point of the story, right? In this phase of the story, to have him back, to bring him back, and show that he is essentially trying to locate Greed, right? Who I know is out there. Again, it's not the same Greed, right? But the fact that he is being reintroduced again, this lizard guy, maybe he might actually play a part in reminding this Greed of the type of person he used to be, reminding him that indeed, you know, the last iteration of Greed did not agree with Father, or not that he didn't agree, but he had his own ideas, his own plans for life, essentially, right? His own trajectory. So I think, yeah, he might end up playing a massive part here. So yeah, you know, he hitched a ride back to Central, and through his reintroduction, now, you know, it's essentially going to give us a reintroduction for Greed and Ling as well. Let's not forget, of course. They've been gone for some time now. Yeah, for a long stretch of this anime, of this story. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really quite excited. And you know, the thing to note here is that this fellow, the lizard chimera, he's petrified. He is absolutely terrified of King Bradley, right? You see that there's trauma there. It was a traumatic event for him, right? There's some PTSD just thinking back to it. But, you know, he digs deep. He digs deep, and he still hitches a ride to Central. Because, you know, at that one point, he's like, you know, I know if I follow them, I can probably locate Greed, because he remembers that this King Bradley figure, the Fuhrer, took him back, right? But also, if I go back, that Fuhrer is going to be there as well. So, you know, it took a lot of courage, I think. I think from his perspective, it could have been much easier to flee, right? And just, I don't know, survive out there perhaps. He's been surviving, but you could tell that it's been a tough time for him. Now, as I am on the topic of King Bradley, right? The fascinating King Bradley. How about that fascinating scene inside of his office, him and Hawkeye? Yet another moment for us audience to get a bit of insight on this mysterious character. Essentially, even now in episode 43, you can feel that there is a sense of uncertainty towards his, or in terms of his motives, perhaps, right? He's still not as dialed in, or he's still not as clear cut as some of these other homunculi. He's just not, right? I think there's a lot of nuance there. And it's not something that's new. It's always been the case for this character. And this idea of him kind of sharing some of this information that he simply did not have to share, right? And that information being that he made that choice himself about his life partner, that he himself is the only one who made that choice, right? And you see that there is a semblance of resentment towards this father figure of his, right? The dwarf in the flask, that everything that he's done in his life, at least in most of his life, has been kind of selected or handpicked and given to him and chosen for him. But he felt that at that moment in time, it was important that he puts it out there, right? Not that he ultimately cares that much about Hawkeye's opinion, but I think to him, it was important that he kind of maintains this aspect of it, that no, not everything was chosen for me or given to me or, instructed of me. I made my own choice in terms of my life partner. And, Hawkeye is actually legitimately surprised by this revelation, right? First of all, the actual revelation itself, and that he is sharing this openly. Listen, could this come back to bite him in the ass? Possibly, because, now Hawkeye knows that, okay, there is one person that he legitimately does seem to care for, right? Unless, of course, this aspect of it is also another play on Bradley's end. Maybe he's trying to fish. Maybe he is trying to put this information out there. But my first thought here is that no, it wasn't the case. To me, it legitimately felt like he wanted it to be known, right? That not everything in his life has been orchestrated by Father. That not his entire life path has been orchestrated and laid out and chosen for him. But I think in his moment of arrogance, perhaps, that is a trait that a lot of these homunculi kind of possess, don't they? Arrogance. Maybe in that moment, he might have slipped up a bit, right? I guess I'll find out. Now, listen, I'm not saying that Hawkeye could ever even think of harming Mrs. Bradley. No, not at all. But the fact is that information is out there now, right? This is the type of thing that could backfire. And King Bradley, and I speak of this arrogance, having someone like Hawkeye right by his side at all times, again, a hostage to kind of keep Mustang in line, but it doesn't mean that it's going to go according to plan either, right? Hawkeye being so close to him and Hawkeye being so intelligent, of course, she figured out that Celine Bradley is Pride. And the only reason that happened is because she was his assistant. She had to go and bring in these papers. So, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, yes, on one end, she's kind of a hostage, but on the other end, there's these openings, right? There's these cracks that someone as intelligent as Hawkeye can kind of extract from, right? So, I don't know. Is she potentially going to get this information to Mustang somehow, right? But, Hawkeye is one thing and Mustang is another thing. So I don't know, man. Let's see how it plays out. If this actually plays a part at all, right? Knowing that he does actually care for Mrs. Bradley. Unless, of course, even this is a bit of a setup from King Bradley's end to see how they potentially react to this. And you see that in her response, she is really quite sad and dejected about this. That, even this family is a facade, right? That everything is just make-believe. That, they're just pretending to be the people that they hate so much, right? The ants that they hate so much, right? Bite of the ant, as you go back to the title, adequately titled. They really do excel at the titles in this anime. But yeah, I thought it was a fantastic scene. But, staying in Central, the Armstrong siblings kind of reunite as well. And yeah, it's quite a spiky reunion, especially from Olivier's perspective, right? She's really laying into Alex, who's like a puppy. He's essentially a puppy in that moment, right? It's some tough love. It's certainly some tough love. And perhaps there's even a case of her really leaning into it and really hamming it up a bit, because she is at the high table at this point in Central, and you see that she sees something really quite shocking, and to see that look on her face specifically, yeah, that's insane. You see that she's even a little bit heartbroken, I think, that her country that she devoted herself to can sink to this level, can do something like this, right? And I get a glimpse of some of these immortal soldiers for the first time, though they seem to be the shells at this moment, right? Ready to kind of be deployed once they are animated, essentially. Now, going back to her spiky attitude towards Alex, and her even claiming that, I don't claim him to be a brother. Not someone like him, not a coward like him who deserted Ishwal, right? Now, even there, you have this two-pronged perspective, perhaps, because she certainly is not a person that is for genocide or anything. Of course not. So I don't think it's as simple as her, being angry or being annoyed that he deserted his position, right? I think there's clearly a bit more nuance there, right? I think it's more so to do with the fact that, okay, if that was your stance, right, I back you, but you deserted, right? You should have stayed there, even though, of course, staying there, there's really not much Alex could have done, right? Yeah, there's just not. But I think from her perspective, it's more about sticking to your convictions and, sticking it out and staying there. If that's your belief, back it. Unless, of course, I'm overthinking it and it is as simple as she's just annoyed that he left his position and he deserted. I don't know. I would like to think there is a bit more nuance to her approach and opinion and her perspective on this. Now let's shift the focus to that incredible set piece, that incredible fight sequence, some of the best animation I've seen in this anime so far, right? Every now and then you'll get a really noticeable segment in the animation that really feels like a lot of effort has been put into it. And also, it's important because I get to see yet another homunculus taken out. And that was the whole point, right? To draw them out. And, that's the reason Zempono kind of plays along and kind of bamboozled me as well. And I was really quite happy about that, I wasn't upset that I didn't pick up on that. I was really quite excited about that. It made me really quite happy. I'm like fist pumping. I'm excited for Zempono that, he didn't sell out. But it was more so defeating a homunculus, right? Rather than killing a homunculus. I mean, Lust is the only one that's been legitimately just killed off, right? Gluttony almost died, but you see that Father is going to bring Gluttony back. That might be another reappearance or reintroduction I might get soon enough. I saw baby Gluttony in that one scene. And then Greed is kind of, absorbed back into Father. But also, does that mean the fact that Lust died and is completely kind of vanquished? Does that mean that that sin, that emotion of lust is just never going to be a part of Father ever again, right? Because it's extracted from him, right? These sins are extracted, these emotions are extracted from him. But how about the true form of envy? Oh my goodness! I mean, how fitting, how ironic. This tiny little monster, this creature that's just chirping at you, right? Still trying to manipulate, still trying to kind of, make use of your trauma and make use of your guilt. Really lean into it. She, they, them, him, they, or them. They're still trying to kind of get under Marco's skin, really get into his head again. And at one point, Marco is kind of pulled back into that misery of his, right? Once he does find out that his entire team is gone, they're dead, and they are used as a part of a Philosopher's Stone, right? Something he has a massive role in, right? So much so that he is one of the few that knows how to destroy one. So in terms of how he managed it, to me, it kind of looked like the souls are being exhausted or being removed or something along those lines. And as that's happening, envy is kind of forced to take a few different shapes and sizes and forms, from the big dinosaur form, then there's another form and another form. Slowly, bit by bit, it kind of trickles down to that little tiny thing, right? So I don't know, maybe they'll explain it in a bit more detail. Maybe it's by design that, it's not completely clear how he manages it. Of course, it's a great moment as he pulls off his glove and you see the circle, right? I just think it's so fantastic that Dr. Marco gets one of the most heroic moments of the entire series, right? It felt like such an earned redemption moment for Dr. Marco. And I love that, Scar is kind of happy in that moment. Of course, he doesn't, I'm not saying that he looks happy or that he's smiling. You can just tell there's this mutual respect. All you need is a frame of him kind of looking at Dr. Marco after it's all done to see that, someone like Dr. Marco, who's not really a fighter, he's not meant to be doing these things, right? He's capable. He is really quite capable. But the fact that he is able to, kind of dig deep and pull this off and then really take it into his own hands, right? Take accountability as well and change things. I think it's lovely to see that both Dr. Marco and Scar have actually grown to become these partners, essentially, right? There's mutual respect there, I think. You see that Dr. Marco almost immediately accepted that Scar needs him. Scar is asking for his help, or, he's saying that I'll need you for this. Dr. Marco accepted, right? There is a bit of trust there now, right? They've spent some time together. And I think, one of the reasons for that is also Mei Chang, right? She was kind of a bridge as well. So for that reason, it's really quite sad, alongside a few other reasons, to see Mei Chang go. That being said, I don't think, surely that can't be the last of Mei Chang, because it doesn't really feel like the natural conclusion to her arc. And the whole reason for that is because Scar is thinking about her. He's thinking about her perspective. He's thinking about the responsibilities that she has, the immense amount of pressure that she has on her tiny shoulders, right? He cares for her, right? And Yoki knew all that time ago that, she's going to be someone that can relate to Scar, or Scar can relate to, right? So I thought it was fantastic that Scar is still thinking about her, right? And thinking about her safety as well. I think a part of this is also about getting her out of here, right? So she can go back to her country and she can get back in one piece as well. And he gives her the newly transformed, or the new homunculus, or this homunculus in its actual form, right? To kind of take back and research and kind of provide this token, essentially, to the Emperor. But even that in itself is a little bit risky, isn't it? To give her that specimen. Earlier I mentioned that this is such a satisfying and fulfilling episode. That comes from some of the things like seeing Scar in this episode, seeing Dr. Marco in this episode. I mean, Scar, oh my goodness. You see that he's off that path now, the path of vengeance. He's not on that anymore. You see that his recent experiences and encounters with a lot of really interesting and respectable people has really shifted his perspective, right? It has. And, he's kind of focusing that energy and his part in all of this into a different direction, right? And I love that Dr. Marco is meant to play a part in that. You see that he wants to change things, and of course, running into people like Miles, a fellow Ashwaulan brother, has really, really kind of made quite the impact on him, and it's beautiful to see. It really is. So I'm loving him, and of course, in the grand scheme of things, of course, he wants to continue playing his part in kind of stopping this whole thing, right? Father and his plans and all of that. I'm sure he's going to play a substantial role in that, because his late brother's legacy actually might be playing a substantial part in all of this, right? Him figuring a lot of those things out, even though Hohenheim might be behind a lot of that already, right? In terms of getting things ready, through his research, and I'm speaking of Scar's late brother, you see that, Scar is going to want to respect that, right? And know that, okay, this is my brother's legacy. I have to be around to make sure, right? And play my part and do my part in this. So yeah, it's crazy that someone like Scar's brother, who I only ever got to see a few times in a flashback, yeah, he's going to have such a major impact from the looks of it. And even the fact that he decides to give Mei Chang this new form, or the true form of this homunculus, the homunculus that kicked it all off in the first place, right? By shooting that Ishwalan child. That homunculus, Envy, is responsible for all that misery that was essentially a part of Scar's life from that point on. Yet you see that rage and anger is not there, right? He was really quite controlled, even in his attack. And, if you compare that to perhaps the Kimberly fight, you see in the depiction of the eyes, the rage kind of bubbling through. It wasn't there. It was much like King Bradley. It was much more of a controlled wrath through Scar at that moment. He's really quite in control of his emotions. You could really see that here. So I thought even that is a big moment, that he doesn't feel the need to completely punish and kill this new form, or the true form of this homunculus that caused all of this in the first place, or kicked it off. Let's not put all the blame on Envy, because they're following orders, but yeah, from one perspective, they took the shot that kicked it all off. And lastly, on that front, he does not want Mei Chang to suffer the same fate, right? Losing her entire family or clan because she wasn't able to kind of come through, right? So he is protective of her, he is. But there was a lot of really interesting imagery in this one. You see the camera is kind of pointing towards or up at people like Marco and Scar in one of the chimeras. And you see Envy's essentially saying things like, creatures like you don't get to look down at me, right? Again, it's quite the contrast there in the imagery that is being depicted. You see the shame that they are feeling at that moment, the embarrassment of that situation. No, not the chimera as well, right? Oof, you really feel it. At that moment, it's just eating them up. And then they'll be saying things like maggot, worm, don't be so cocky, low creatures like yourselves don't get to look down on me. I just thought it was all so interesting, right? given their true form. And I've got to say, the chibi voice was really quite wholesome and cute. Another dwarf in the flask, essentially. And also, I love that moment as they're telling Zampono, no one's going to believe your third-rate acting. Ultimately, they were bamboozled by his acting, by Zampono's acting, right? He sold that. He really got them out there, didn't he? Certainly got me. Certainly got me. And also, lastly, let me just kind of mention Azumi-sensei and her not being home and her husband not being home either. It appears that, throughout their conversations, recent conversations, Hohenheim must have filled her in about the whole situation, and then, indeed she is going to be this important sacrifice, right? So clearly there has been some communication there. So let's see how all of that plays out. Like I said, there's a lot of exciting setup in this episode. It's a great episode. I think it's one of my favorites, actually. It can easily make the top 20 of this anime for me, based on a lot of the things that play out in this episode. Great episode. But yeah, I think that's about it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access to the next few episodes, or perhaps even timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. Whew, okay, that was fun. That was really a lot of fun, man. It was. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next episode. Until then, take it easy.